Welcome everyone to the Crops-Drought Weekly Update for the week ending August 27, 2022. So let's get to the products and see what happened last week climatically and crop-wise in the United States. So we start out each week looking at the large fire incidents, and probably won't be looking at this going forward because everything on here is contained on the firm's US-Canada map. That if I zoom out, shows, let me turn the satellite off, shows all of the, I've got it set to, all these flames are large fires over 1,000 acres, and the red are smaller incidences. So in the west, we've been kind of tracking this area in the west and seeing how things progress week to week. There is a fire up in South Dakota, North Dakota border. It's in a field. It's 5,200 acres or so. The big one we're watching over here is the moose fire, and this has grown now to about 97,000 acres and is 42% contained. Again, no containment date being estimated, and a lot of these again will burn until snow falls in the fall. However, we can zoom to that as we have been doing recently, and here is the footprint of the moose fire. So the kind of white or gray area here is a overlay map of the burn area, the red or smaller fires around the perimeter and within it. You can see a lot of other fires. Here's one, wood tick, dismal, Indian Ridge, so a lot of fires in this Idaho region. If we look at the satellite imagery, we've been looking at that to look at smoke inundation, and unfortunately the satellite image line, you can see right down through the center of this scene to where we can see smoke being generated to the west, and this image is of a different time, and so we're not seeing continuation of that smoke. And so if we go to the VIIRS, then we can see more of a consistent picture. This is, if you look up here, this is 24 hours within the last day. So these images, this image we're seeing right here, is probably close to 24 hours old. It's the last visible image available for this location. If we go to look at today, everything is black because the last image was at nighttime and nothing is showing. So this is a little old, but we can see from the moose fire there's not a lot of smoke being generated downstream of it in the valleys. Maybe some thin smoke layers in here. Some of these other fires, like the Four Corners, you can see the prolific smoke coming off of it and then drifting off to the east and following these valleys and going over here to into Yellowstone National Park. So through the clouds in Yellowstone, you can see some smoke and whatnot in there. So a lot of smoke being generated up here. It doesn't look too overwhelming. Again, this image is yesterday. Today, right now, most of Yellowstone is cloud-free. Clouds begin to build out here in the Bighorn Basin, and then there's a large cloud bank along a line something like this to the west is all covered in clouds, but the greater Yellowstone area right now is cloud-free. So you have to look back at weather products and forward to these types of images to kind of get an idea of what's going on. And I think I have the current map. In fact, this is the current satellite image for the North American continent, so you can see the current, and this is probably just within hours old. And so again, clouds, and unfortunately as I move my mouse it moves the product, so I'll try to keep still, but if you can see where my crosshairs are, they're out in the Bighorn Basin in Wyoming, and just east of that or west of that going toward Yellowstone there's some clouds. Most of Yellowstone is cloud free, and then a large cloud bank from kind of the western part of Yellowstone going to the west. But you cannot determine from this a lot of smoke. So even though there's a lot of smoke coming off individual fires, it's kind of stopping in this mid-Yellowstone area. Now, interestingly, note if we track this back, this seems to be originating from somewhere in northern California, so that may be a fire. So let's go back to firms, and no, it was coming from right here. on that satellite imagery. So it doesn't appear to be a fire at that location. So interesting though, there's this cloud plume starting from right there. All right, so anyway, let's jump forward to the Drought Monitor. And this again is a comparison slider looking at drought conditions across the United States from the week ending August 16th, which is the current view. And as we move this slider to the left across the U.S., the conditions update to what it was August 23. And so in the last week we saw this increase in extreme drought, the red up here in the northeast. And as we put the slider through there, that continues in through this current week that just passed, and everything stays relatively the same until we get into here. And there is a small extreme drought here in southern Missouri. That's going to go away. And then the next changes are going to be in this region of kind of northeast Texas through the panhandle of Texas, and in this region is going to change. Other than that, pretty much everything stays the same. Not very much change, and you can see that Texas, this northeast Texas region here, go from the extreme back down into just mainly severe, and then some more changes in this area up here. So, and they did receive some rain last week and in the last 7 or 8 days. So it's amazing what rain will do, huh? So go figure. But the rest of the West, pretty consistent. Drought patterns are just locked into the Central Valley up through the north, and then in this Nevada, Utah area. Okay, just a reminder, looking at the NDVI composites from the VIIRS satellite, these have experienced an anomaly in the middle of August, and so the data are being generated by other sources, and the true VIIRS data for NDVI is not being generated. Okay, saying that though, we can go to Vegscape. Look at NDVI. Here is the weekly average ending the 24th, which was just a couple of days ago. And overall, again, this is NDVI, so looking at vegetative growth. The darker the green, the higher the value. So 0.6 to 1 is going to be the dark green. That's the higher growth states. Kind of the light greens and the yellows are medium to low growth states, and then the tans, reds, and orange are again keyed on primarily soil, bare ground, no vegetative life status being detected in those areas. So if we step through the days of last week, the 20th, the gray areas again are low value, pretty much indicating that not that the plants have died or no longer functioning, but things like daily heat waves that kind of interfere with the growth of the structures, could be floods, could be increase in precipitation, whatever kind of interrupts a vigorous growth condition for the plant is going to show in this gray. Okay, so there's the condition on the 20th. The 21st, in these kind of gray areas, these flash droughts, these really short-term droughty days due to particular weather conditions, you'll see them move through the country similar to how a weather front would be moving through the nation. Okay, persisting down to the southeast on the 22nd, 23rd, starting to break up in the Texas region, and they have had rain down here in the last week again, so that is relieving some of that drought. Okay, the 24th through the northern tier of the country with some spot droughty days. The 25th, again, more pervasive through this area from Utah up through into eastern Montana, northeastern Wyoming, western South Dakota. And on the 25th, we had an inch of rain up here. And so again, heavy rain interrupting growth activity, that type of thing, may be what this is sensing. I'm not sure if that's the fact or not, but we did have a lot of rain on the 25th, and in fact we had another almost a half inch last night, and so rain is coming into some of these areas. You can see vigorous crop growth still occurring in the corn belt, and some of these areas are again setting up and getting ready for corn harvest. And a new product we're going to start looking at is this called Crop CASMA, which is crop condition and soil moisture analytics, and there's a variety of products that can be downloaded and portrayed here, and one of them is a 3-hour measurement of soil moisture. For our purposes, I have loaded up the last weekly average for the week ending August 24th, 2022, and the colors are the soil moisture. You can see the scale over here, and the units of this is cubic centimeters of water per cubic centimeter of soil in the top layer of the soil. And what this would mean is that these red and orange are very low soil water, so 0.1 and less cubic centimeters of water per cubic centimeter of soil, and they pretty much correlate with the really droughty areas that we've seen on the previous products through this north part of Texas, up through the central part of the US, and then over through the west. The greens and yellows are going to be more of an average value, 0.2 to 0.4 cubic centimeters of water per cubic centimeter soil. And then the extremely wet, these deep blues, they only occur, if you look on here, coastal regions. Okay, coastal Louisiana. I think there's some dark blue coming up the eastern seaboard, up along Lake Michigan, you know, the Boundary Waters area in Minnesota. Some areas down in Minnesota that they must have been having some pretty good rain, because these are very, very wet soils. And then, of course, out in the Olympic Peninsula in Washington, that's essentially a rainforest. And so in my area, we're in here in this kind of a pale orange to yellow, so maybe in the 0.15 cubic centimeters of water per cubic centimeter soil. Again, we just have had almost 1.5 inches of rain at my place in the last 36 hours. And so it'll be interesting to see how that changes the weekly average as we go forward into the next week. So what can we expect for precipitation coming up? Again, here is the GFS model. The runtime is up here on the right. This starts at 12 p.m. August 27, which is today, and each time slices is a plus 6 hours. And I just want to remind you that last week when we looked at this, it forecasted on the 25th, 26th that western South Dakota should have some precipitation, and indeed we got nearly 1.5 inches at my place. So that's really good that far out, a week in advance, that it actually hit it on the day that it said it was going to. However, as we start this slider here, as I watch my area going forward, we have, and there was a high pressure that just moved through, and so we don't see any forecast precipitation for western South Dakota until clear out, and we're not there yet, into September. There's a little bit showing up on the 8th, and then maybe more covering the Black Hills area on the 9th of September. 306 hours into the future. Is it going to happen? We don't know. The good thing is that starting in about 3 or 4 days, according to this model, this area of central and southern Texas and the areas that have been under severe drought for a while are forecast to begin to see some precipitation. So if we back this up and then go forward somewhere right in here, starting on the 29th, so in a couple of days, for next several days, there are potential for storms and rain to be moving through over a period of 4 to 5, maybe even 6 days into early September, and then it kind of dries out again. Okay, so we'll keep an eye on these things to see how they develop. Thanks for watching this channel. Leave a comment down below. See you next week.